Yes, guys. Hello and welcome back to the Spurs-Related YouTube channel. I hope everyone's doing very well on this Friday afternoon. Today, we have all sorts to get through in 40 minutes. We've got investments, stadium naming rights, Morgan Gibbs-White, what is going on, other transfer links, and also banter from the admin around Kudus and Van der Ven. We'll get into that. We'll get into everything. But guys, really appreciate all the support lately. Keep smashing those like buttons, keep subscribing, keep commenting your thoughts and turn on those noti bells. But enough of the plugging because you know I only do it twice every video. Let's introduce our co-hosts. We got Frank Thomas, aka Thomas Frank's AI younger brother. Thomas Frank. Frank, how you doing, mate?
I'm all good. It's been a mental 24 hours, 48 hours with Spurs, and nothing is ever plain sailing with Tottenham. So it's obviously gone wrong somewhere along the line. So good to talk about it.
Absolutely. You know, when Tottenham fans fly high and you just think we've made two signings for 120 million within 24 hours, there is a little bit of a blip. It should still go through it. We'll get through things in a minute and update you on exactly what has happened there because it is a little bit confusing and it is a bit interesting and a bit of a weird one. But we've also got, I think debuting on the channel. I don't think he's been on the Spurs-Related channel, but he's been on Irish Hotspur many a times, and I've been on it a couple of times with him. It is my Pro Club's partner. That is Sam, Spurs Undercover. Sam, how you doing, mate?
I'm very well, lads. I'm a little bit hot, a little bit sweaty, but can't complain. How are you?
Absolutely. Yeah, all good, mate. Exactly the same. Yeah, I always find the time to like wipe my brow is when I just bring up some news like that. So, I've just let everyone know my secret of what goes on behind the scenes. But guys, as I said, there's already 30 of you. The numbers are going to keep growing. I really appreciate all the support. Write your comments in. I'll bring them up. We'll create talking points and all that good stuff. But let's get straight into things because what is going on with the Morgan Gibbs-White deal? Well, of course, yesterday we did have the here we go from Fabrizio Romano. We're thinking it's plain sailing, and now suddenly there is a little bit of question marks over whether this is going to happen. I've got to say, it still should be happening, but at the same time, saying Nottingham Forest preparing a complaint to the Premier League, crying their eyes out. That owner of theirs, always has a strop on. He was even getting a strop on with Nuno on one of the games last season. It seems like he's got got something wrong with him, I'll be honest with you. But Nottingham Forest working on a potential legal action as they believe Spurs made an illegal approach to the player. How can you make an illegal approach to a player? I don't get it. Sam, fill me in because I feel like you know more than me about this one.
Well, I think that's generous to say. I know stuff about it. I've just kind of been in the last few hours reading of everyone crying about it, and I think that basically what they're trying to say is that there was this kind of secret release clause for Morgan Gibbs-White of 60 million, and when Spurs put in a bid at 60 million, they were thinking, hold on a minute, how does Spurs know about this? And so they're trying to, I think, claim that we were tapping up Gibbs-White, which obviously would, I guess, substitute sort of be a illegal maneuver from the club. But I've also read people saying that the agent would have told us that. So I'm confused. And if we've met the release clause, then I don't really see, if the player wants to come, I don't really see how they can kind of block that transfer from happening.
Absolutely, yeah. I can't see them being able to block it either. It just doesn't quite make sense. As we saw yesterday, medical was meant to be booked today. I'm still not sure if the medical has happened. Frank, what are your thoughts on this, mate? What do you think's happened? What do you think the reason is they've kicked up a fuss?
I think it's the same sort of thing. That it's this supposed secret release clause, which I didn't know was a thing. And we spoke about yesterday. I think Johnny mentioned it yesterday, that it's the CAA base that obviously is their agency and have a real strong link with Tottenham. So whether that's, so that they've obviously heard along the grapevine somewhere that deal could be done, and Forest have got the ump with it. I mean, we sort of said it beforehand that Marinakis likes to complain about everything. I imagine the deal will still go through. I think. But I was looking earlier on, I saw some other examples. I mean, it happened with Van Dijk when he went to Liverpool. from Southampton that Southampton threatened with a legal thing. Happened when Toby Alderweireld came to us, that Southampton threatened a legal thing, similar sort of situation. But then it also happened with Palace when Chelsea went for Michael Olise, and a week later he signed a new contract and stayed. So I would suspect it still goes through. Whether you're Daniel Levy's biggest fan or not, the one thing I'll give him is he tends to do things relatively ethically and legally. So I would suspect that he's not too much in the wrong. I could be wrong, but I would suspect this is probably more of Forest kicking up a fuss because they're upset they've lost probably or arguably their best player for less than they probably wish they could have got for him.
I don't think there's any argument it's their best player. I think Morgan Gibbs-White is their best player. You know, you could maybe put Chris Wood in there, obviously an amazing goal scorer, but he's not exactly their best player. He's a good finisher. But I think Morgan Gibbs-White technically is their best player. You could argue Elanga was up there last season. They've lost him. So they're probably just thinking, you know, losing Morgan Gibbs-White, losing Elanga, who else could they potentially lose? Isn't there one of their centre-backs linked with somewhere? I mean, they could honestly be losing 3 or 4 of their top 5 players, which is quite funny for a club that, you know, I like Forest. I'm not going to sit here and, you know, talk down on them, but, you know, I think they think that I was watching some fan having a meltdown yesterday saying, how can Spurs be getting Morgan Gibbs-White? You know, we're a bigger club than Tottenham. I'm just thinking, calm down, guys. Like, it's not Brian Clough era now. But anyway, what can we expect? Well, as we've just summarised, I think it's fair to say that this deal should still go through, perhaps not as swiftly as we perhaps first imagined, but do not panic, guys. This is going to happen. I'm going to put my head on the line on that one. That's for sure. A little bit more information from Rob Dorset of Sky saying Nottingham Forest considering deal to take Gibbs-White is currently off. Forest consulting their lawyers over what they believe is an illegal approach. They never gave permission for talks and have cut all comms from Spurs. Cut all comms from Spurs as well. Unlikely they can block it, but definitely a delay. So there you go, guys. Just to reiterate, expecting Morgan Gibbs-White still to go through. I don't think Fabrizio Romano would have jumped the gun with a here we go if it wasn't concrete. But, you know, a little bit of a blip legally. And as Frank was saying, and Sam, you know, Daniel Levy, he's very, very sharp businessman. As much as we all can say stuff about him, he would have done his due diligence on this one. Perhaps maybe there was a bit of, I don't know, Paratici getting involved, doing a bit of, you know, the dark arts. Who knows? Who knows what's happened, really? But that's summarised it, Abdul Rahman. Hopefully that makes sense. Zach Birkin, this is nonsense. The owner is just salty. I think it's fair to say. Why so confident it's going to happen? I'm just, as I said, like it's just a small blip for legal reasons. Basically, Forest. I think Sam hit the nail on the head. They're salty. They're losing their best player, and they don't like the way that we approached Morgan Gibbs-White. It seems pathetic, really, but who cares? I'm not going to get too pressed over this because at the end of the day, we're going to get the player. And a little bit more information on that, just to go over this a little bit more, is that Tottenham are still hopeful, according to Sammy Mockbell, that the deal will be completed despite all of this Forest considering legal action and using lawyers. So fear not, guys, it's going to happen. And we can safely say that we'll have Morgan Gibbs-White in a Spurs shirt in pre-season, or at least at the start of the season. So happy days, hopefully, unless we turn around and do an emergency live stream later and something's gone wrong. Zach saying, I hope it goes through, but this is not a good look for Forest as a club. Makes them look like a small club. And if a player wants to leave, let him leave. Spot on. I agree. Anything more to add, Sam, on Morgan Gibbs-White? I haven't actually got your thoughts on him as a player. Frank and I discussed him a lot yesterday. I want to get your thoughts on Morgan Gibbs-White. Do you think we, A, needed him? And B, are you excited? Do you think he's going to fit in like a glove? What do you think is going to happen here?
Well, it's funny because when I saw the original reports from Ornstein that we were accelerating our discussions with them, I put out a tweet, and I guess luckily I've only got like 60 followers, so I didn't get mudded. But I basically put out a tweet saying that as much as I like Gibbs-White as a player, sorry, the train's going over.
Is that Thomas the Frank engine in the background, Sam?
It can't be stopped. It can't be stopped. Yeah, as much as I like GibbsWhite as a player, and I think that I was listening to Ali Gold earlier, and he was saying that when these kind of players come around, you just take it. It doesn't matter necessarily if you think that you need them. You just take them because they're potentially a ceiling raiser.
Yeah.
But I was looking at it like I just feel like we have so many more priority positions. The main one, in my opinion, being that 6 that I think pretty much every Spurs fan after Ange's first season thought we really need a destroyer in that middle of the park. But maybe it'll be different under a Frank system, slightly more defensive orientated, building from the back rather than, trying to overload the attack like Ange's system with leaving your defense exposed. So maybe the need for, a sole destroyer in that position wouldn't be as much. But I still personally think, there are players out there that we could get linked to. And you mentioned about sort of you like Forest. There's nothing against them. I just think it's funny whenever it's Spurs, I feel like you always see these teams like Forest this season, Villa last season, Newcastle the season before. They always want to. Am I still here? Yeah, cool. They always want to.
Yeah, all good. You lagged a bit. I don't know if it was my side, but yeah, crack on.
No, I think it might have been me. They always want to put us down and say, oh, Spurs are being replaced in the big 6. So when you're saying that Forest fans are saying how this, small club Tottenham signing our best player, it's like, it's just copium, everyone wants to put us down. And that's one of the things that actually brought me back towards Ange when he was here, because he, towards the end, near the Europa League final, he started making that kind of point in the media, you all don't want Spurs to succeed. You can't fathom Spurs succeeding, which, for all of Ange's faults, that was a really big one for me that turned me back towards him.
Yeah, no, 100%. There is this weird thing in the football community where Tottenham are hated, and there's this sort of weird stigma about us. But no, completely get your points there, mate. Completely get it. Let's move on from talking about Morgan Gibbs-White. And guys, there's 56 people watching on YouTube and Facebook, and I've just looked on YouTube. The likes are 9. How have we got 9 likes, guys? Let's get to 50 likes. You smashed around 100 likes on yesterday's episode. Really appreciate all the support. Keep smashing the support on the channel. We'll keep bringing you all the stats, all the transfer news, all the tactical analysis from myself, Frank, and the rest of the Spurs-related team. So let's keep going. Let's talk about Mohamed Kudus for a few minutes. And guys, while we go on to the subject of Mohamed Kudus, what I want you to do is whack in the chat, because I want to make this a talking point. I like doing an engagement segment. Whack in your front 4 for the start of the season in terms of who you think is going to line up. So Solanke's kind of talks for himself as the striker. Who do you think the 3 will be in behind there, as the 4-2-3-1 of Thomas Frank will probably be what we're starting with? Let us know in the comments, Frank and Sam. I'll comment to you on that one in just a minute, so get your thoughts in your head. But Mohamed Kudus obviously announced yesterday by the club. Pretty cold edit, I've got to say, from the admins at Tottenham and the social team. Obviously, also had a bit of banter with Mickey van der Ven. I don't think we can put it on screen. Probably get copyrighted. Probably, may not. But anyway, you guys saw it where he's shaking hands with Kudus, van der Ven is, and obviously a bit of banter there. Also, Madison put out something earlier on his social regarding, Van der Ven being scared of Kudus while they're all sitting in the kitchen. Quite a funny one. We've gone too far on that one. But yes, I'm going to go over to Frank on that question I just asked. How do you think Kudus is going to fit in, Frank? Do you think he starts at right wing? Do you think Johnson gets benched? How do you think that's going to happen? Obviously, we've spoken about it on the channel a couple of times before, but what's your thoughts?
I think ultimately, and this is going to be a pretty poor answer, I think. Ultimately, I don't know how Thomas Frank is going to start. I imagine he'll start as sort of a 4-2-3-1. That's probably the most likely. Certainly in the Burnley game, on the first day of the season, I think Kudus will start on the right. But it wouldn't shock me if ultimately he almost went 4 up front, being Johnson and Solanke as two nines. I don't. I think that comment there, the A1 synergy comment, is probably what I think it will be, give or take. Gibbs-White may be replaced by James Maddison. It wouldn't shock me if in that game against Burnley, they're going to have a lot of the ball. They're going to have most of the ball. They're going to want to create, and so it wouldn't shock me if they went with, we said yesterday, a pivot of double pivot of Bergvall and Gibbs-White behind James Maddison with Kudus and Kudus. Tell I think will definitely start. I think Solanke will definitely start. I guess the bigger talking points are probably the Johnson Kudus one, but I think Kudus will probably start at the start. But then obviously, as the week after, we got Manchester City away, and so if he ends up moving to a back five or whatever, and he might leave Kudus and Tell out altogether, and that's something we said yesterday. I think Johnson will play largely as a 9 in a front 2 in those sorts of games. Got to play
Kulusevski. Sorry, Frank. Got to play Kulusevski at Man City. That guy literally owns them every time he plays them.
The deck he had.
Yeah, the deck he had, exactly. But good points. Let's see what the chat's saying, guys. Keep whacking your comments in. Great to see all these comments. So Abdul Rahman saying Solanke, Kudus, Wissa, and Tell would be his front 4. Wissa obviously still heavily linked with Tottenham. Not too many updates on that one, but as we said yesterday, Fabrizio Romano did say that there was concrete interest. A1 Synergy's gone, as we just discussed. Dom Tell, MGW. I love how it's abbreviated to MGW already. Stuart saying Tell on the left, Kulu when fit in the middle, Kudus on the right, and if we don't have a second striker, then I can see Frank reinventing Johnson as a striker, which is sort of what Frank's just been saying there. Zach's gone for Kudus, Solanke, MGW, and Madders. So would you put Morgan Gibbs-White on the left? I guess. Can play on the left. John Fitzsimmons, welcome in, mate, on Facebook. He's saying, what has happened with Nottingham Forest about the player? If you want, you can rewind just to the start of the segment. We did a 10-minute bit about essentially Nottingham Forest have tried to launch some legal action around us illegally approaching Morgan Gibbs-White, apparently against the rules. So yes, go back and rewind and watch from the start, guys. I know a lot of you like watching on repeat if you miss certain bits. Finley saying thoughts on the rumours of Kudus being addicted to Roblox. What's that all about? Sam, do you know anything about that?
I can't say I do, but if he's addicted to Roblox, then he's not doing other things, and that's all I'll say.
Oh dearie me. Couple of gags in the chat as well. We still need big up Bashraf. Good to see you, mate. He's saying we still need that offensive midfielder and bit concerned on Romero's commitment. I believe we do have an update on Romero, which we'll get into in just a bit. Obviously, we want to talk about this investment thing, which is very, very interesting. That's coming through today from Paul O'Keefe and various sources. I'm sure Fabrizio will have something to say on it. Yes, so Kudus. Sorry, actually, Sam, I didn't get your thoughts on Kudus. Who are you having? Well, I want your thoughts on Kudus first as a player, because there is mixed reactions. I personally think he's going to be great. But secondly, where do you think he fits in, and what do you think our front 4 will be? Sorry, I've asked you about 5 questions there. I can't do just one.
Okay, well, I'll start with Kudus as a player. His first season at West Ham, I was watching him like, oh my God, this guy looks unbelievable. How the hell has he ended up at West Ham when he was available and we needed a winger? So I was quite jealous. Obviously, last season he wasn't great, but then there was a lot of uncertainty at West Ham. They didn't have, they had the Lopetegui. He got sacked. They brought in Graham Potter, and I just think that I saw a lot of stuff about him saying that, which maybe people can make the argument it's not a great attitude or mentality, but the fact that he was constantly deployed on the left, I think, was quite a bone of contention for him, because I think if you see some of the media we've put out, he makes quite a big point to say, like, right wing is my position. I think that he is the kind of exact profile of player that we need, not necessarily in terms of output, but in terms of, like, I mean, it's 97% dribble success rate, highest in the league. And when you compare that to Johnson, and as much as I think Johnson is a solid player, but in terms of what he can't do, I think Kudus makes up quite a lot of that, which is why I can see him starting. I do agree with you guys that, in a game against Man City, if Frank decides to go 5 at the back, that I can see Johnson being deployed alongside Solanke, like sort of up front rather than on the wing. But I think it all kind of depends on what happens with Son. I know that that's a completely different topic, but I still think that Son has quite a lot to offer, especially under a Frank system. So my front four would probably be, to start with, Son, Madders, Kudus, and Solanke. That's how I see it. And then if Morgan Gibbs-White sort of stalls and gets done a little bit later, then maybe he'll need a little bit of time to sort of learn what Frank wants him to do, and maybe he overtakes Maddison. But I think that's how I would start the season if Son's still there.
Interesting point about Son, because I feel like everyone's just written him off. Everyone thinks he's going. And I mean, in recent weeks, it seems like, he is sticking around and potentially is either going to be a fringe player or a player in, the dressing room, or, as you've just said, potentially is going to be starting games. And it's also interesting, your point about Madders over Morgan Gibbs-White, because I could also see Morgan Gibbs-White fitting in as almost an 8 in the midfield, as the midfield 2. But then you'd argue you need an anchor in there as well to allow Morgan Gibbs-White to do his box-to-box business. But then where does Bergvall fit in? So it's like we're spoiled for choice, really. It's quite exciting. I mean, I can't believe we're talking about, more than just a starting 11, because for so long we've been talking about, Vicario, Porro, Van der Ven, Romero, Udogie, then Bergvall, then is it Assar, then it's like, is it Bentancur? And then it's the front four kind of talk for themselves. Whereas actually we've got some options now. We've got some, players with versatility and players that are going to really, really change the game. It's really exciting. Spirituals in here says, bro, I hope you get Morgan. We just got robbed of our Europa League spot. We're just talking about that backstage. I'm guessing you're a Palace fan, because it's a bit interesting what's going on there to do with the ownership and how they have Palace have the same ownership as Lyon, and then Lyon got relegated and now they're not relegated and it's all kicked off. But I'm going to stick on the Spurs subject, but that is all a bit crazy. Do you think Son will stay, though? Because there's been quite a lot of rumours he's going to leave to play in the MLS. Well, to be honest with you, I think there's two things here. And guys, Frank, I'm going to come to you next. Correct me if I'm wrong. I think there's two things here. It's like, what are we going to do for the rest of the window? If we've got investment, are we going to essentially upgrade a Son, or, put more into the left wing position, or another forward that Son sometimes slips into? And the second thing is, does Son want to stick around? I think he probably does. But if a Saudi Arabian club or an MLS club come in with 30, 40 million and he's got 1 year left on his deal, do you just take that money, invest it? I mean, it seems like we're not going to be strapped for cash as we maybe were thinking 2 weeks ago. Frank, what do you think about the Son thing? Do you agree with Sam? Do you think he could get into the starting 11 soon? Because I know I want to cause a bit of an argument. I love it. I know that, Frank, you like Son, but you're not sure he's in the starting 11 from next year. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I love him and he's been unbelievable servant and everything. I that will never change. I think he suits the system, the Thomas Frank system, more than I think he suited Andrew's system. And that's quite a key as that inside sort of forward. I think, and so as a squad player next year, I'd be up for him staying. I mean, it depends on the investment though. Like if there's a new sort of group coming in, if it's like an external investment and there's a new group coming in and they're have 40% of it or whatever, and they're controlling the football side of the business, if the first action they do when they come in is sell Heung-min Son, it does start on a negative. And so we kind of spoke for the sake of 30 million. If these guys are, I mean, I can't remember the name of the company, but I read that they think it's going to be one of the bigger oil companies in Saudi Arabia. I read that about half an hour ago. So for that kind of to be worth it, I don't think they would look to sell him for 30 million. And we spoke about it before. If it's Levy in charge, I guess he weighs up. If you keep him for another year and you risk losing him next year on a free, or you lose him next year on a free, how much do you generate from commercial value of Son? Because his commercial value is high. Do you generate more than you would from a fee this summer of selling him for 30 or 40 to Saudi Arabia? So I think he can play a part in the squad next year. I would like to see. I think Tell will be the first choice, and it wouldn't shock me if they found another one that can play, whether it be Wissa, who can play both as a striker and a winger. But I don't think I want to see him starting consistently. That's not to say I don't want him there or anything. But I think ultimately it depends on who the investors are and what their plans are. Because if they get rid of Son, I imagine they'll go all out for a big one to. A bit of a statement to be like, we came in, we got rid of the guy that you loved, and we're sorry, but this is who we're bringing in, and people will be all right. But I think that would be quite a bold first move if investors come in and instantly they got rid of Sonny.
Yeah, it would be a bit of a statement, to mix things up, shake things up. I do agree. It's quite a ballsy move in a way. I feel like it should be Son's decision what he does next, and Son's decision only, really. He's earned that right. He's a club legend. So interesting points, lads. Guys, there's 85 of you on Facebook and YouTube. I've just checked the YouTube likes, and there's 18 likes. So, guys, let's get that to 50. Easy peasy. Please do so. It's free to do so. Smash like, smash subscribe, and smash the notification bells when we go live and do a video every single day. You'll never miss it. You'll never miss all the updates. And talking about updates, we're going to get straight back into the next talking point, which brings us on perfectly, as Frank's just talked about, to do with this potential new investment. And according to Ben Jacobs, I nearly said Jacobs Ben because that's his at. It's like a Thomas Frank situation there. Exclusive is that Spurs are close to finalising a stadium naming rights deal with a Saudi entity as the front runner. I mean, we've been trying to sell the stadium naming rights for absolutely years. I mean, we've been there since 2018, 2019, I believe it opened. I mean, and Levy is quite set on how much he wants per year. I believe, multi-million pounds per year over 10 years is what he was aiming to get. Apparently, advanced talks are taking place. The deal makers have put forward two companies. One is a PIF subsidiary, and the other one is a company unaffiliated. Legalities being explored, so there's no conflict with Newcastle, who of course have Saudi ownership. Nothing guaranteed yet. Spurs have spoken to American companies as well, but discussions are advanced and senior government figures have been involved in the talks. Now, Sam, I know you love to talk about your finance. I know you love to talk about the investment. What did you make of this news? I mean, sort of not a surprise when we suddenly spent £120 million in less than 24 hours. I thought I was sitting there thinking Daniel Levy must be sweating, but there must be something more to this. There must be some money coming in from elsewhere. What do you make of this, mate? And do you think, what do you think the valuation could be?
I mean, look, when that Morgan Gibbs-White deal was announced yesterday, I genuinely was gobsmacked. I couldn't believe. I've spent the last 2 years since I've been kind of like on the podcast, kind of saying this could happen in the transfer window, but I know how my club operates. They're not going to go and spend 55 million on Kudus and then drop 60 million on a Meze, for example. Meanwhile, we've basically done just that if everything goes through. I think what's interesting, if it is one of the Saudi PIF companies that sponsor us, a lot of Spurs fans complain that clubs like Chelsea, for example, whenever they need money or they need to sell players, like for example Koulibaly, Edouard Mendy, they just end up in Saudi. Saudi come in with the lifeline. Meanwhile, other than Richarlison and Son, who neither wanted to go to Saudi, none of our players get picked up. I'm sure that there's players in our squad that there are people thinking, oh, I'd love for a Saudi bid to come in. So maybe they start to offer us that lifeline if they sponsor us, and that could open up a whole new world of transfers. Because one of the biggest criticisms I think that a lot of people have had over Spurs, and maybe it's hypocritical considering that I want to keep Son because I just can't see him leave yet, is the argument that we don't sell players when we should. Look at Christian Eriksen, look at Dele Alli, for example, two recent ones. And these are players who, at the height of even Eric Dyer, I remember when we'd had Dyer for a few years, United were looking at the possibility of signing him. And I think that it would have been interesting to see what would have happened if we'd sold Eriksen for 40, 50 million, for example, and been able to replace him with a serious player. Because I mean, until we signed Maddison, we basically had not replaced Eriksen in that 5-year period, right? We were all over the moon, overjoyed when Maddison came in. So yeah, I think that just having this money, clearly it's clearly not Levy's money, because we've seen in the past that Levy doesn't like dipping his hands into his own pockets. So all of a sudden we've dropped apparently 115 million pounds or whatever the figure is, and to me that is unheard of, especially in the opening, couple weeks of the window. I know we're what, like halfway through now, but we've still got a good chunk left. It's before pre-season started, which never happens for us. So our players will actually be able to get a chance to embed, and who knows, play in the Super Cup. So this is exciting times. Obviously people might have their concerns about where the money's coming from, which I totally understand. But at the same time, this is football these days. There's it doesn't matter where who is putting the money in. A lot of the money is potentially not coming from the best source. So I'm all for it, really.
Of course, all for it indeed. I mean, it's exciting times. It's suddenly like we're playing fantasy football and not Daniel Levy football. Suddenly apparently we could be spending good money on a 6, good money on a backup left back, potentially a second striker, and we have apparently there's this 300 million pound mark that everyone's talking about, where it's like 150 million from one source, 150 million from another. I guess the actual main details of that will come out very soon, probably by tomorrow, who knows, by the end of the week. But it certainly is a massive cash injection that suddenly happened, and suddenly 120 million is maybe just the start of the story, and that actually we'll be talking about a few more here we goes next week, and suddenly we're in amazing shape to challenge in the Champions League, the Premier League, the FA Cup and the League Cup, of course. Martin saying, I don't care who's giving us the money, just let the good times roll. Exactly. We've had to watch Man City and Chelsea invest huge money and sort of get away with it as well. No sort of Man City implications from the 115 charges. I haven't forgotten about that one, by the way. But let's get into a couple more pieces. Really appreciating the support, guys. I see you smashing that like button. Really appreciate it. There's 80 of you on YouTube. There's 20 or 30 on Facebook. Really appreciate all the support. Thank you so much. Hope you are enjoying the content. But Paul
Before
O'Keefe
we
gave
move on,
as
sorry,
well on
James,
this.
can I just make one more point?
Please do.
So with the, when it was being talked about that potentially Levy was gonna sell his shares, this was like 6 months ago or whatever. In my mind, it was like, we've had no trophy for so long, and if we, in a lot of people's opinions, even though Levy's not putting the money in, we were, quote unquote, doing football the right way, investing in the infrastructure to build the club up. So I was initially kind of concerned that if we got taken over by the Qataris or by the Saudis, that it might, even though obviously I'd be overjoyed with winning a trophy, it might slightly lessen it, because it was like, effectively we may have bought it, or that's how it would be seen from people around. And maybe you don't care about that, right? But the fact that we've now won the trophy off the merit of the club, I think I'm much more open-minded to this sort of stuff now, because we've got that monkey off our back, as you say.
It's like the next level, isn't it? It's like we've done it the legit hard working way, almost like the old fashioned way, and now we're joining the crew that are doing it with a mad injection, like Aston Villa and Newcastle, who are now challenging as those top 6 teams. Even Forest have got a decent amount of money behind them, and then you've got even Chelsea are on another level with Man City, Arsenal splashing the cash. Obviously, Liverpool have done in the past as well, or even this summer with 115 million for Wirtz. So it's like now we're trying to become back into that top 4, back into that top 6 at least, and trying to establish ourselves again. And that's nice to see, because obviously, like you said, got the monkey off our backs, won that Europa League, and now we can push on and really invest and really, like you said, do you care about where it comes from? I personally don't. I want to see our club challenge for leagues and Champions Leagues, which is what Daniel Levy and Vin I have been telling us, isn't it? So there we go. Ronnie, I want to get into your your lineup and how you'd start. I know we talked about the front four, Sam. Frank and I had a little slide, which I'll bring up again for the end of this show. But it's going to be interesting how we shape up for sure. Zach saying, I do hope we have Morgan Gibbs-White with Kudus against PSG because that link up might be insane, along with a poacher like Solanke. Got to be honest, lads. I'm trying to stay optimistic about that game, but I can't just know how good PSG are. They're like, honestly, they're genuinely, I don't know. I don't think this is too much to say. I think they're the best team we've seen since that prime sort of Real Madrid or Barcelona team. They're incredible. They really are incredible. Hopefully we catch them on an off day, but at the end of the day, it's only the Super Cup, isn't it? Martin's saying it might be the Americans. They just bought the LA Lakers for 10 billion. Ugh, loose change. And Darren's in here saying, breaking news, West Ham have made a complaint to the Premier League board that they were also robbed. Well, that's their owner's fault, isn't it? Silly boys. Anyway, let's talk about this investment slightly more, and then we'll get into that lineup, as I said. There will be an investment as well as a large sponsorship deal for Tottenham. The changes will see a management reshuffle as well as new roles. Likely Levy stays, but potentially in a different role, reduced and perhaps even non-football related role, according to Paul O'Keefe. So Levy isn't going out, but apparently his football-related input will be slimmed down potentially. It was probably more to come on that one. But Frank, I'm going to you on this one because I know you have a lot to say about the board, a lot of, you were the one that brought up this point. What do you think of this, mate? Do you think this is, it's a silly question. Do you think it's good news that Levy is stepping away from the football side? Do you think it's going to happen?
Yeah, I think it will. I think it's kind of a matter of time that they've built the foundations of the club kind of up again since and it sounds, every time I come on here, it sounds like I'm really pro Daniel Levy, and I'm not. But we
all know your true roots, mate. We all know.
When you look at it from just the blueprint of what they've done. They've built the training ground, the stadium, and they've turned Tottenham into a side that more often than not are in and around European places, right? And they're part of that top six cemented, and so they've been a big part of that. And so if Levy was there to run part of the business, I don't mind. I don't have a major issue with that. I do want him to step away from the football. I don't really want him near the football because I just don't. I don't think he's in. But that's why they have directors of football and these guys who are supposed to be, like Vinay, for example. Obviously came from Arsenal in April time. He's obviously a good head that's seems to be contributing well in with fans and things like that. And so having people like that is important. And I think so. Levy needs to step away a little bit from that and maybe take himself out of the firing line a little bit. And that's, again, awful as it sounds like I'm pro Daniel Levy, but step away and let someone come in and take the football side of it, because he runs a business superbly well. And I'm, as from a solely business point of view, he's one of the better ones in the league. But that's, as a fan, I don't care about that. I don't want to care about how many shirt sales there are, or the F1 under the ground, or the Beyonce. Do you know what I mean? So, so I think it will happen. I think it possibly has happened. I think it's probably gonna come out. I was reading a little while ago that it's Aramco, they reckon, who are one of, if not the biggest, sort of Saudi oil fund, and they're owned by the government and whatever. So they're if it does happen, I think it's gonna be big. And as I say, Tottenham, largely thanks to Levy and Enoch, and since their time, have got the foundations to be a powerhouse. They've got the ground, they've got the training ground, they've got all these avenues to finance that. I think Aramco own Aston Martin as well in the F1. I'm not overly knowledgeable in F1, but I'm pretty sure they do. And obviously with the F1 track under the ground, that's a marketing opportunity for them. And it all kind of makes sense, I think, the whole thing. So I think it will happen at some point. I think Tottenham, as given location in London and just everything, I think they are completely set up to be bought by someone with a lot of money that sees it as a good opportunity.
100%. Yeah, really interesting points. That we could be. It's clever, isn't it? It's clever that we're talking about the F1 potentially linked with Aston Martin. There's all these little linking points that make it a real big prospect on our hands. Let's talk. We'll probably come back to the investment bit. I'm conscious of time. Let's talk a bit more about transfers, because we've talked a lot about incomings. We've talked a lot about the investment and how we're going to sign more players. Surely we're going to see the door, some of these players to the door, to get some outgoings, to be able to make room for some even more signings. And I think it's fair to say that our midfield is a little bit imbalanced at the moment. It's fair to say we need a more defensive-minded midfielder, and potentially we're going to see players such as Yves Bassuma on his way out. Obviously, only 1 year left on his contract, but very much sort of hot and cold. Had a good end to the season, had a good Europa League campaign at the end, but I think it's fair to say we'd probably look to get some value, and that is in the form of Turkey. I mean, Fenerbahce, Galatasaray, Besiktas seem to be signing more players than they've ever signed before. There's definitely some investment that's gone in over there. I've seen a few channels talk about this recently, and Yves Bassuma apparently could be going to Fenerbahce. Representative authorised by Fenerbahce has flown to London to meet with Bassuma and Tottenham. So very much could see this one happening. Sam, what are your thoughts on Bassuma? Do you think he will be going, and are you sad to see him go? Because obviously, like I said, we did see some sort of spark there at the end of the last season, especially in sort of the quarterfinal, semi-final and final of the Europa League, did put in a decent shift.
Yeah, look, I mean, ultimately with Bassuma, I think that when he came in, I was so excited. I was willing to pay 50 million originally, and then when we got him for 25 million, I know that there was the kind of legal case in the background that was kind of coming to a close that maybe diminished his value a little bit. But I was very excited to see him come in, and then, I'm sure a lot of the fan base was on a similar page to me, where I was kind of angry at Conte for never giving him a chance. And then Conte gave him a few games, and I was like, "Ooh, maybe this is why Conte hasn't given him a chance. He's not been great." Then obviously under Ange, those first 10 games, he was probably up there as the standout player. There was metrics that were showing, on I saw online between him, Rodri, and Declan Rice. And it was basically like Rodri and Bassuma had all of the stats, and then Declan Rice was like slightly behind. And then, in the last year and a half, obviously we've seen, unfortunately, Bassuma's inconsistency and off-field antics take away from what we know is a great player. And look, maybe that was also system-based, because you're asking a player who's not really a traditional six to play in that role. Although I think, at times he did his job, but, there's, for every, good game that he's played, there's a Chelsea giving away that stupid penalty, for example. But as you say, towards the end of the season, I mean, arguably his form helped us win the Europa League, like quite a big factor in that, because he ate up the midfield in those latter games in the Europa League. And Ange told him, "You're going to be a big player for me." And in the end, although it wasn't consistent, he was, he helped us get over the line. And so I'd be sad to see Bis go, but I think that ultimately you've got to put emotion aside and say, this is a player that you can get money for. As I said, he was only 25 million when we signed him. So if you can recoup that and probably a bit more, then, I'd take that. And, you can replace him with some of the younger players that, got their experience last year, like a Bergvall or a Gray, and bring in someone to replace him in terms of real quality. I see that we're linked to Palhinha, and there was another six, but I can't think of who it was.
Douglas Luiz.
Yes, that's it. Who I'd also love for the record. Although getting players that we love hasn't always worked out for me, that I love anyway. But yeah, I think in terms of the actual transfer to Turkey, I'm not sure about it, to be honest. I think for him, he'd be open to it personally, because it's still Europa, it's still Champions League. But if Mourinho's going to still be the manager there, which I know is obviously every week you see a new thing coming out of that league, that either he's making comments about, the integrity of the league, or, the league is basically saying they want him gone. I can't imagine him loving Bassuma's attitude. That's my one concern about it. I know that on his day he's the player, but it's the consistency and, as we say, the off-field antics that I just think that would cause him to clash with Mourinho. So for that reason, I can't see it happening, but I can definitely see him leaving this window.
Yeah, and I think you made a good point sort of halfway through there about sort of recouping some of that value. We signed him for around 25 to 30 million. And I think even with 1 year left on his deal, we could probably get between 20, maybe high ends of 20 million back for him. And even if it's 20 million, we've lost 5 million on a player over 3 years? I think it's been 4 years. So pretty decent business. And I know there's always been that voodoo over Spurs that we don't cash in on players. I think, Sam, you made the point earlier about like an Eric Dyer, about an Eriksen. So, to be able to get some money back on some of these players rather than let their contracts expire and they then end up going on a free is refreshing. It's smart if we get rid of him. I think it's, I think there's quality in that team that's better. And I think we'll obviously get a number 6 if those sources are correct. So I don't think it would be a massive shame. I do love, like you said, I love Bassuma. I think when he's at his best, he is really, really good, but he's not always at his best. He's very inconsistent. So I think, I think it's the right time. We could talk about Richarlison. We could talk about other outgoings. I'm going to leave it for another episode, guys, but let me know in the comments below if you're watching on repeat, who else you think will be going out that door. Is it a Sonny? Is it a Richarlison? Is it some of the youngsters going out on loan? Let me know your thoughts in the comments below. We've got a couple more pieces to get through. Now, we can't go live without talking about this man, Christian Romero. According to Jack Pitbrook and a couple of other sources, Atletico Madrid, who had been leading the chase for his services all summer, have decided to stop their pursuit of Cuti Romero. And Atletico, they believe Tottenham will now try to tie Romero to a new contract. Big news. Could we see Romero signing, doing a full circle, I guess, in some respects, and signing a new contract? What great news that would be. That would almost be like a new signing, right, guys? At the end of the day, we were already sort of planning if Romero goes, would we get a Mark Guehi? Would we get, a Hincapié? Who would we get? And interesting stuff. Frank, I mean, pretty good news if that is true to get Romero on a contract. Do you think it's going to happen?
I don't know. I think they'll try. I mean, we kind of spoke about it. One of the first ones I came on here for, and we said that the whole thing is, I love him. I think he's brilliant, and I think he has the potential, if he stayed here, to be one of Tottenham's best. You could argue he's kind of up there already, but one of Tottenham's best centre halves ever. Part of that European team, and a big part of it as well, in man of the match in the final and player of the tournament. And so the guy's unbelievable, but it's about commitment. If he's really committed to being here, then I think he's got to probably sign a contract in the next year. To be honest with you, when I woke up and saw that this morning, that was kind of the bit that said to me, I think there's some sort of investment going on, because he's always made it quite clear that this idea of that the ambition has to be there. And I don't think he dislikes being at Tottenham. I think he's pretty happy at Tottenham and in London and all this. I think he wants to be at a club that's ambitious and is going to, compete. And so I think for that reason, that kind of said to me that something's going on, because if they have belief as well that they can actually turn this around and cause this U-turn and give him a contract, and he's willing to take that, then I mean, that's brilliant news. If there was obviously the thing in the summer that he bought into Ange, and then 5 minutes after Thomas Frank was announced, he posted his Ange message and all this. But I think if he's really committed to being here with Thomas Frank, which I think he'll love him, because I think he's a good coach, and I think vice versa. I think Thomas Frank will love him because he's a superb centre half. So I think ultimately, if they can get that done, I mean, it'll be a real, like, almost a new signing. I know he's not, but that level of how brilliant that will be.
Yeah, no, I completely agree, mate. I completely agree. I think it will be interesting to see if that comes out next week. If we are moving mad, if that investment does help, you might maybe give him a boost in wages. Maybe it means he gets more of a leadership role. If Sonny goes away, that's the other thing. I did remember reading something about Romero's keen to be a leader, keen to be a captain. He was obviously captain of the side quite a few times last season. So very interesting. Okay, so last talking point of the show, guys. Still around 70 of you watching on YouTube. Absolutely love it. Smash the like, smash the subscribe, smash the noti bell. I love the notification bell because you never ever miss a video or live stream. And you guys can always be in here when we're on to our next video. But an interactive element for the last part of the show. It's not that slide. It is this one. And we brought this up yesterday. In terms of potential starting 11 under Thomas Frank come the first game of the season in August against Burnley at home. Obviously, we know we've got some preseason games to get through first, as well as the Super Cup. But that first game in the middle of August against Burnley at home, this going to the point of, Morgan Gibbs-White joining and that actually going through, which should happen. This is what we could potentially see come that match. And I mean, you look at it on paper, guys, it's pretty exciting, right? It's pretty exciting stuff. Sam, I'm going to come to you because Frank and I have already sort of discussed this yesterday. And guys, let me know in the chat, or if you're watching on repeat on the comments, what you would change about this starting 11. But like I said, Sam, I'm coming to you. Would you change anything, or would you add a new signing in here that would make this even better with being realistic?
I look at the midfield and I just worry a little bit. As much as that looks like really exciting, and against maybe a Burnley, for example, who are just going to sit behind the ball, you could play that sort of one. I guess that's kind of similar to when Ange was playing Kulusevski and Maddison together, right? But the concern would be, when you come up against one of the bigger boys, or even just like a good transition team, I worry that a midfield of Gibbs-White and Bergvall might end up getting caught out. Look, we've discussed it before on the show that it is going to be interesting to see kind of where Bergvall fits into this, because I do think that he can play in that position, but I just think that he'll need someone next to him that can take a bit more of the defensive game away from him, to give him a bit more freedom to basically drive with the ball, which is also what Gibbs-White wants to do, right? So that's my only real concern. And again, as much as I like Tell, I don't see him starting the season. Look, maybe towards the end of the season, he'll get a bit more game time, a bit more experience. Hopefully the goals will start flowing. But as it stands right now, I personally wouldn't be starting Tell.
And you'd put Son there instead, right?
I think so, because under Ange, right, Son was being played as a touchline winger. And I don't know about you guys, but I've never seen Son in Spurs as a touchline winger. He's basically always been sort of like an inside forward, or like a shadow striker almost, running off the last line of the defense. And, we've seen in Frank's system that Mbeumo makes that sort of, has that sort of role in the Frank team. So I can imagine that if Kudus is deployed a bit more as the creative winger and Son is the finishing winger, then I'm all for that, really.
It's exciting because there's options there. There's versatility. There's ways we can see a Tell depending on the opponent. There's ways we could see a Son on that left side. There's ways we could see a Johnson coming centrally. Kudus coming was more of a 10. Maybe Kulusevski is involved. Let's not forget about him. We've sort of he's not even been in the talks on this video, has he? So it's exciting that we've got that much depth. Frank, anything to add from your point? Sorry, before I come to you, actually, Frank, I'm just going to catch up on the chat because there's been a lot of people commenting on this. Abdul Rahman saying buy a new striker. Archer saying probably Bentancur into the Bergvall, but rotate, similar to what you're saying, Sam, about maybe having that a bit more of a defensive unit in there. A1 Synergy saying change Bergvall for a new 6, and I think that's how we'll play versus Burnley. It's crazy to think Bergvall could potentially not even in this 11. I mean, surely. Mon Gibbs-White 8 goals and Kudus 5 goals. That's so exciting. Any news on Wharton, because he's a genius? Nothing on Wharton. There's been some tier 3 and 4 sources saying we're linked, but nothing too concrete there. Wharton and Gyökeres would be the game changers. Interesting. I'm sorry, I don't know what some people see in Tell. Seems like Archie, you're singing from the same hymn sheet as Sam. Maybe. I mean, Sam, I'm not saying that you're saying Tell's a bad player. I'm saying you think he's an important. You think Son's still in the mix. Come to Frank very quickly. Frank, anything you change just quickly, and then we will wrap things up. Plug Sam's Twitter, and then wrap things up.
I think the only thing I'd say, sort of looking at the comments and things as well, is I think Bergvall, for me, and I know it was obviously a strange season because we weren't very good, but I think Bergvall was one of the real few shining lights throughout the whole thing. I think the guy's a genius, actually. And I think he will suit Thomas Frank's system massively because he's energetic. He's an intelligent footballer. He's comfortable on the ball. He can press. He can tackle. He can do the lot. And so I think, but where he's young enough as well, is I think Thomas Frank can kind of mould him into what he wants him to be. And so I think there'll be times when, like that Burnley game, we're going to have so much of the ball that you can almost do that and be comfortable doing that, because we aren't going to be this open outfit like we were last year, because last year was insane at times. And so I'd like a 6, but like when we go to Manchester City, that midfield, I don't want to play that midfield because that will get torn apart, for example. And so maybe you leave one of them out or whatever and play Bentancur or said 6 next to him. But certainly in those games, Bergvall, I think, has to play.
Definitely, yeah. Depending on the opponent, depending if it's a low block, depending if it's a different type of opponent. Completely agree. Guys, great show today. Really enjoyed it. Guys, before you all click off the video, there's still 80 of you watching on YouTube. Please do me four very quick favors. First one is like this live stream if you did enjoy it. Subscribe if you are new is the second one. The third one is turn on notification bells. Every single one of them takes 2 seconds to do so. It's free to do so, and it helps us out massively. So I'd really appreciate if you liked, subscribed, and turned on notification bells. The fourth one is to go and follow Sam's Twitter X, if you like, on Spurs Undercover on Twitter. I'm sure he'll follow some of you back if you're lucky enough. But Sam, thank you so much for coming on, mate. Really appreciate it. And you've made some amazing points today. What can people see on your Twitter just very quickly, mate?
A bit of banter. Yeah, a few rants, a bit of banter, calling a few people out, because sometimes I just, when you're bored and you read stuff about whatever it is in the Spurs sphere, and you're just like, what, I can't take this anymore. Let me write let me craft this soul-destroying message for this person. Other than that, you can find me, as you kindly mentioned at the beginning, I do a show with the Irish Hotspur on Tuesdays. And I really appreciate being welcomed on. I've followed SpursRelated on Instagram for a long time. So it feels like a rite of passage to be invited on. So I really appreciate it. And it's been a pleasure to stream with you both.
Appreciate the kind words, mate. Thank you so much for coming on again. Guys, go and check out Sam's Twitter. And as I said, the other 3 things, like the stream. There's only 50 likes. Let's get it to 100. Subscribe if you're new and turn on those noti bells. I'm obsessed with the notification bells. I absolutely love it because it's free to do so. And it means you never miss a stream or a video. Frank, thanks so much again, as always. Sam, thank you very much. And guys, remember, as always, come on, you Spurs. Get some more done.